Hello, good morning. How's it going? Switch my mic over. It's good. Hopefully, you guys can hear me well. Gonna light some sage. Excuse me. Hi, Cherise. Good morning, darling. Hi, Chandrika. How are you? Hi, Nathalie. Hello. Hi, Marissa. Hi, Amma, darling. How are you? How is everyone? How's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? How was your weekend? How are you, Lori? Nice to see you. Hi, Sophie. Just smudging out the space after a busy weekend. There's been a lot going on this weekend. Hi, Adam. Nice to see you. Hi, Bradley. You still on your adventure, Bradley? Are you heading home soon? Hi, Nathaniel. Nice to see you. Hi, Aya. Hi, Margarita. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Katya. Good morning, Mary, Sandra. What have you guys been up to this weekend? Anything interesting? Bradley, you're already running pups. You're joking. My God. When do you ever slow down? That's funny. I brought one of my favorite mugs for today. Hi, say hi to Jen. He's still around. I heard from him this weekend. It was nice to hear from him. I got a pat on the back. I had a conversation with my soul guides this weekend, and I said something about, about the class and all of these things and how I was excited about everything that's unfolding. And they're like, you do know that this was meant to happen, right? Like all of this, everything, this was all part of the plan all along, right? And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I said, what about the other people in this plan? They didn't seem to know that was the plan. They said, well, they forgot. It's not your fault that they forgot. This was the plan all along. I was like, oh, well, that's good to know. That's comforting to know that this was the plan all along, that I was supposed to have this course and supposed to be teaching these things. And they're like, yeah, this was a prenatal contract, Lara. You had this plan all along. I was like, oh, good to know. I had a very exciting chat with Adriana last night because I forgot like a couple days ago. I was like, I was too sick on my birthday, but maybe we could do my Akashic Records reading so that way I could kind of understand my most, personal relationships in life. And then I was too sick on my birthday. So we decided we are going to postpone it for a little while. And I said, well, let's just do it on a quiet Sunday. And she's like, yeah, let's just do it this Sunday. And I was like, all right, cool. And I completely forgot. I was ready to sit down and do cases last night and ready to do clearings. And she's like, don't you remember what today is? And I was like, no. And she goes, we're going to go through your Akashic Records today. Your guides are on this side today. They're standing next to me right now. And I was like, oh, yes. Yay. That's right. I was supposed to look into my Akashic Records. So I basically got to figure out all the fine details and context between every major relationship I've ever had, including friendships that have fallen apart and things. And I got to learn like people do not change. They really don't. Because it's funny, like Adriana didn't even know I've never told her about some of these relationships that I had in the past because I mean it's water under the bridge. This is stuff from 20 years ago, even sometimes even older. And so, I was just kind of like, I wanted to know what loose ends I'm tying up, or at least what I'm still working on karmically anyway. I wanted to know, like, what homework am I still kind of subconsciously working on? And they said, you've been doing this your whole life. This is your last lifetime as a human. So you've been kind of tying up loose ends this whole time. They said, haven't you noticed that people will come into your life and then they'll come in like really hot and heavy and then they're gone. Like they come in, cause a whole bunch of chaos or something will go on, or you'll have a very explosive relationship, and the next thing you know, they're just gone again, and you're like, what's happening here? So we went back through some of my, like I said, some friendships, my past relationships. As some of you guys know, I've been married twice. So it's kind of like, can you give me some context, like about my ex relationships? And so when Adriana went through my Akashic record, all I had to do was kind of give her a name, and they would be able to give me some deeper understanding as to why I was in that particular relationship with them and what the dynamics of that relationships were, and then also to kind of like where things went wrong and why we went our separate ways. And the funny thing is it just repeated itself basically. Like, there's this one girl that I've known for a very long time. She and I used to be what I consider to be best friends, but it turned out that she was more of a frenemy. Like, you ever have a friend that you think is your friend, but she's actually not, and she's secretly like kind of backstabbing you the whole time, and you don't really recognize that this person is using you until after you kind of see some really bad behaviors and you have to go through some experiences to really set boundaries and know who's truly a friend and who isn't. Well, I had one of those relationships, and sure enough, all I had to do was tell her the name of the person. That was it. That's all I had to do. And she was like, "Oh, you guys go way back." And I said, I thought so. She goes, "Yeah, multiple lifetimes, same issue." And I said, "What was the issue?" And she's like, "Cattiness, jealousy, certain things that you would get that she wouldn't be happy about, and just all of this certain things." And she goes, "There's this one lifetime where you were incarnated together as siblings." And the same behaviors continued on, where she was constantly jealous, constantly picking on you, constantly trying to stir up shit, until one day she actually went. Your parents were away. Your parents went away somewhere, and it was only the staff that was looking after you. And I apparently she wrote a letter to my parents telling her that I beat her up. So she wrote like, "Oh, she's being so mean to me, this and that." And yeah, they wrote this big long letter and they sent it off. And when my parents wrote back to us, they basically were like, "Oh, well, she's gonna get this and she's in that." And anyway, whole lot of drama that occurred through these different lifetimes. And I ended up beating her up in that lifetime, because I'm like, if you're going to tell them I'm going to beat you up, I'm just going to beat you up and then I'll make it accurate. So basically what I did is I beat her up, and that created karma between each other. And so, yeah, this isn't somebody you guys know. This is a girl named Raven that I traveled with. I backpacked with this girl for like 12 years. I paid for everything. She traveled with me for years, and I paid for every penny of our travel together. And she, as soon as I tried to cut her off financially, that's when everything got really ugly. And so, yeah, this is somebody that I cut off a long time ago, but I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back repeatedly by her. It's a really long story, but there was some karmic stuff we were still working out, and we were repeating the same cycle, the same shit she did to me in 2 or 3 lifetimes. She was doing to me in this exact same thing in this lifetime. And it blew me away. I'm like, am I still repairing karma with this woman? Like, why do we keep having the same type of relationship over and over? And they were like, no, you pretty much cleared things out on your end. It's her that needs to kind of, you have to forgive. Just let it go. As soon as you let it go, it's done. And I was like, oh, I'm done. Let it go. Like, it's been gone for years, but I'm just happy that I have some context now, so we can actually understand why certain relationships fell apart the way they did. And it was funny too. Like, do you guys remember that how I told you about my first husband and how he was such a major drinker and he was a real jerk? Well, it's kind of funny. The shoe is on the other foot in that lifetime, because apparently we were married in Egypt, and it was the other way around, where I was the husband and I was a real asshole. I was like always kind of cheating, being naughty. and getting into trouble. And, it's kind of funny how we end up repeating cycles, but the other way around. That's exactly kind of the opposite in this incarnation. So it's funny how, we'll repeat cycles with the same soul over and over again, but in different capacities, where they hurt you a certain way and then you hurt them the same way, and then vice versa. So it was really interesting to learn like all these different dynamics in my life. I also found out about my worst shadow life too. I was one of the questions I wanted to know. Like, where was I like the naughtiest? Like, what incarnation was I the naughtiest of all? You know what they told me? I was a priest. I was a very naughty priest. We'll put it that way. I won't go too far into details. This was in the 12th century in somewhere in Europe. I wasn't very nice to the nuns. So I'm like, am I still repeating? Like, am I clearing karma from this? And they're like, oh, no. You cleared all that like ages ago. And they're like, we wouldn't even be mentioning this if you weren't talking about it. And I'm like, well, I want to know. Like, I want to know what I still need to work on. And they're like, not much. You're just tying up loose ends, which is why sometimes a person will come in and then everything will go all helter skelter crazy. And then the person will leave. And it's like, that was a big karmic lesson. It's like a mini lesson of the bigger version of the lesson that we had in a previous incarnation. So I had a really interesting chat too about Aiden's dad as well, because Aiden's dad and I, my ex-husband from South Africa, I was chatting with him this morning about it actually. I was like, guess what? I found out. And he's like, what? And I said, you were a pilot in World War II. And he's like, I could see that. He still watches stuff about being a pilot. He's still watching stuff about World War II as well, which is kind of funny. So apparently he and I were married in that incarnation. He got shot down over Germany. He survived getting shot down, and then he came back home, and things were not very good between us when he got home because he was very hurt and damaged, and he was like a broken man, they said. Shame. So it's funny how we came back again to the similar relationship, and you end up repeating cycles again. So almost every incarnation, you have the same people in the same capacity over and over again. And I was like, God, for the soul guides, can you imagine? This is like Groundhog Day. Like, the soul guides have to watch you go through the same relationships with the same people the same way over and over again. So it's very interesting how these things come up. Ray said, didn't you also say you were a nun? Yes, I was a nun as well. Maybe I was repaying something in that lifetime. I don't know. That was in France. Yes, and I had a box in that incarnation that I was obsessed with. It was a little jeweled box, and they said that as a nun, I had this box with me all the time. It was a relic, and they said that there was a reptilian artifact inside the box. And it was a cursed box, and I kept this cursed box with me my whole life, and it was a big part of my incarnation as a nun. This was in France in the 14th century. So these are the things you're going to learn as you start going through your Akashic record. I even said to my guides, like, how much of this is relevant? They're like, almost none of it. I was like, okay. They're like, and I also asked, I was like, I want to know about my incarnation where I was killed as a witch, because I know that they drowned me. I have a memory of being drowned. In fact, I went to Kulrus. I don't know if you guys remember last year where I went to Scotland and then I went to Iona. And I asked if I'd been to Iona before, if it was an incarnation before. And they said, no, you've never been to Iona before. And I said, well, why did I feel so drawn to it? Why did I feel like I had to go there? And they told me light codes. I was bringing the light. I was there to hold the light. That's what they told me. I was like, interesting. Okay. But then after I left Iona, I was kind of curious. I was driving around and I really wanted to go and understand some of the witch hunting things that had happened. And there was this one town called Kulrus in Scotland that when I tried to go there, I lost 3 tires on the way there. 3 tires popped on the way to this town. And I was like, oh, these beasties aren't going to stop me now. You know, that was kind of my vibe where I was like, they're not getting in the way. There's something that doesn't want me to go to Kulrus, so I'm going. You know what I found out last night? It was my own soul guides. I thought it was a beastie the whole time. It wasn't a beastie. It was my own guides. They didn't want me to go to Kulrus. So they they popped my tires. And they were like, surely Laura will get the point, right? Surely Laura will see 3 pop tires. This is a sign she shouldn't go. I told you, Taurus, born in the year of the ox, very stubborn. So I was like, oh, I'm going. I don't care if I have to fucking walk there. Like, that's why I was like, I'm going. And my guides were like, like, so I asked them, why did I not want to go to Culver? Like, why did you not want me to go there? And they said, well, we were worried that you would end up triggering past life trauma that would be very extreme. So I'm like, what past life trauma? And they said, when you were killed as a witch. And I was like, I knew it. So I did die in Culrus. And they said, yeah. And I said, so that means I was drowned. And they were like, not technically. I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, they tried to drown you, but it didn't work. So they unchained you from the rocks and then put you on a pyre and burned you as well. So apparently I was drowned. They couldn't kill me from drowning. So they ended up taking me off of the beach where they had everybody chained to the rocks. And then they put me on a pyre and burned me as well. So I got drowned and burned as a witch. It's funny. Didn't they say, wasn't there like a saying, like if they said if she drowned, she wasn't a witch, but if she did drown, oh sorry, if she didn't drown, then she wasn't a witch. But then they were like, oh, she must be. So anyway, it was very interesting to find out that, yeah, that was the reason why they didn't want me to go to Colress, was because they didn't want me to trigger some kind of unnecessary trauma within my own mindset. But that didn't happen, did it? I did have some memories downloaded. I was quite upset. Like when I heard them telling the story about where they kept the women, and then I went down to the rocks where they chained the women, that got me emotional. I started crying. But I thought I was just tuning into the energy of the space. I didn't realize that I was one of the victims that had drowned there. Yep. Well, actually, no, like I said, I didn't drown. I almost drowned. Maria says, my neighbor just walked by and heard a snippet of what you said. I can only imagine what they thought. Floater sink, yes, Daniel. See, this is what they do, is they had all these stupid little tests back in the day where they were testing women to see if you died and you weren't a witch, because apparently being a witch means you would save yourself. And then they were like, all these people died, and they're like, oops, I guess we were wrong. Reminds me of that scene in Monty Python. She turned me into a newt. What? I got better. They said if she doesn't drown, she's a witch, which means they get to kill her either way. See you. Thanks, Mars. I had a feeling that was the case. Yep. So yeah, there's all kinds of interesting things you find out in your Akashic records. You never know what you're going to learn. And that was my big plan for today, to chat. What do you guys want to talk about? Light some Palo Santo after my witchy talk. There's all kinds of trauma that ends up in our subconscious that we aren't even aware of, that we don't really understand why we are the way we are, why we have certain trust issues or certain paranoias or phobias. And then we find out, okay, yeah, that is a good reason. Oh, it's good to see you, Ariana. We did. I had a great weekend. Class went so well, you guys. It really did. On Friday, we had the 4-hour class. It went to exactly 4 hours. And then on Saturday, it was a 3.5-hour class. And to be honest, like some of it did seem like we rushed a little bit. But for the most part, like you guys are going to be learning more about it anyway in certain subjects when we have class on the 7th and 8th. The signups are already on my website. So if you guys go to my website, you'll see courses, classes, workshops. It's all up there. You can sign up for the recording from part 1, or you can sign up for part 2. They're both live up there now. Has anyone seen their Facebook newsfeed currently flooded with posts about Spanish scientists who had invented what he called energy vision? I have not seen that at all. I have not seen that. My newsfeed is still filled with Annabelle posts. In fact, I'm hiding most of them now because I'm like, I can't take this shit anymore. Like, enough with the Annabelle. Like, God. I had to keep hiding posts as I'm going down, like, no, 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 I refuse. I don't want to look at Annabelle. She's everywhere in my newsfeed. Joanne says your class was awesome. Thank you so much, Joanne. Oh, thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Marcella. I have not heard anything about this scientist. Interesting. Anyone notice all the extra portals at the moment? Yes, there are a lot of portals out there right now. They're being opened through CERN. They're being opened through all kinds of weird activity. Like the last few days has been very bizarre. Ever since the 15th, it's been kind of strange. But I did mention this morning, so I wanted to talk about this a little bit today. There was a timeline glitch, a timeline jump that has occurred. Because on Thursday night, anybody notice anything interesting about Thursday night? Thursday night felt kind of weird and off, and I didn't sleep very well. And then Friday, everything was also kind of felt like weird and just kind of like, I don't know, just off. That's what everybody keeps saying. Like things just feel off, right? And so I said something. I think there was Friday evening, we were doing clearings, and the guides were like, oh, yeah, you guys had a major timeline jump yesterday. Then we're like, oh, cool, timeline jump. All right. Is this a better timeline? They're like, oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know. Like, awesome. So we continue on going as normal, and then Saturday happens, and I usually kind of pre-write my reports. Like I go through and I prepare my reports for when I'm doing clearings later on. And so I was doing these clearings with a friend, with Carolyn actually. And I said to Carolyn, oh, here's the name of our next client. And as I looked at the name, I thought, wow, his name looks familiar. Like, didn't we already clear this guy? And I thought, no, because I'm very careful about making sure that everything is ticked properly and making sure we don't have to check the same person twice and all that. So I was like, no, there's no way we cleared this guy already. So I went and I checked, and sure enough, nothing. No report sent. So I'm like, all right. So I continue prepping the report. And as I sit down to work with Carolyn, I give her the name and the address, and she's like, I'm having deja vu. Didn't we already clear this person? And I was like, thank you for validating that, because I also remember this person's name. Like it's almost like I remember even what was attached to this person. So we tune in, and sure enough, we can't find the report anywhere. There was no report whatsoever, no proof that we had cleared him. Nothing was done. And I'm like, that's very odd. So we tune into the guy. We find the same things that I remember clearing. 2 demonics and a Lizzie. I remember exactly what it was, because these clearings, they'd sit in your mind sometimes for days. And so I remembered exactly what he had, 2 demonics and a Lizzie. And sure enough, we tuned in to clear him, and that's what we found. Exact same thing. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is huge deja vu. And they say that deja vu is actually when you have a memory of something that has just happened, you jumped into a different timeline, or there's some kind of a timeline glitch happening. So I even said something about it. And that's when the guides were like, no, you did already technically clear him, but you won't find evidence of that. And I said, how so? And they said, because it's a different timeline. And I was like, really? Like these things can even mess with our clearings and our bookings? And they said, yeah, absolutely. In one timeline, you already cleared him. In another timeline, you didn't. And I was like, does that mean I'm more behind in this timeline with clearings than I am in my other timeline? Because technically I cleared him days ago. Like, how does this even work? And then we started asking questions about different timelines. And they said, well, as you go up in frequency, you're going to notice timeline shifts are happening more and more rapidly. And I was like, as we go up in vibration. And then it made me start to wonder, like, what about the people who are not going up in vibration? And I was like, so technically, does that mean like I'm going up in vibration? So what about my clients? Like, where is my work gonna stay on 3D, and then I'm ascending to like 5D, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh look, no beasties around. Oh great, we're in 5D now. Everything is great. Not realizing that all of my work is now technically in an alternate reality, another timeline where they're still getting picked on by Lizzies in a lower frequency. And the guides are like, yeah, actually, kind of. I'm like, holy shit. Like, so it's a good thing I'm raising my vibration, but at the same time, the faster I raise my vibration, the less work I'm going to have around, because technically I'm going up in frequency while the work is staying down here. And the guides are like, well, this is how it works. This is how frequency shifts change things, how you go to different versions of Earth. And I was like, but technically, I'm not trying to like shirk all this other work. Like, I'm here to do. And they're like, well, technically, the people that you bring with you are going to be raising in frequency as well. But eventually, and that is the ultimate goal, that technically there will not be any earthbounds. There will not be death loops. As soon as we get to 5D, because the death loops and a lot of the earthbound stuff, all the low vibrational dense stuff, that's happening at a lower frequency. So, and I'm like, what about the people who aren't ready to shift to a higher frequency? And they're like, well, they will continue on Earth at a lower dimension, at a different frequency, in another reality, another alternate version of Earth. And I said, well, like, so it kind of threw Carolyn and I into a bit of a frustrated existential crisis last night, because we were like, well, maybe we aren't ready for 5D then, because we're trying to make change here. We want the lower 3D to change too. And they're like, well, they'll get there eventually. So, and I'm like, how does this work? And they said, well, every layer, every timeline that goes up in frequency, it kind of brings the others with it. It's like they're hauling the slower, lower frequencies higher too. So anyway, it's one of those things, like, welcome to the 3D holographic reality that we're always talking about. Like, this is the glitches in the matrix. Because, like I said, death loops should not be happening. We talked about this in class. Death loops are not a real thing. Like, I should say, they're not something that is supposed to be naturally happening. Because there's certain things that we're like, why is this even a problem? Why is this even a thing? And they'll say, oh, well, actually, this isn't supposed to be happening, and this is a glitch for the 3D matrix. And once the 3D matrix falls apart, it will no longer be an issue. Souls will have an easier time crossing over. There won't be any glitches with death where they end up repeating their death over and over and over again, because the death loops cause so much trauma, you can't even believe it. Most of the time when I go and do an earthbound check and somebody is kind of trapped in a dark void with an entity or something, their perception has been kind of locked down. Like, they don't even know what's been happening around them, right? So they're just kind of disassociated to the point where they're just kind of like, checked out. They don't want to focus on what's happening around them. But when you get stuck in a death loop, you're re-triggering that trauma. You're dying over and over and over and over. Your worst moment of your entire life lived over and over and over again. Sometimes even to the point of thousands of times. And so they cause so much trauma, it's unbelievable. In fact, when we pull somebody out of a death loop, in fact, it's very difficult to have a conversation with them. It's very difficult. They need time to kind of acclimate and snap out of it. But unfortunately, that trauma is compiled. Instead of dying once, it's like they've died 1,000 times in that same way. So out of all the things that need to change on this planet, those death loops, I mean, that is a huge factor. If you died in a car accident, if you blew up in an explosion somewhere, if you died drowning somewhere, like, so many people stuck in death loops, it's unbelievable. So that is the one thing that I'm very excited about, what we can try to change as we change to a higher frequency. So the death loop is the soul's fall to the reptilians. It's a side effect of the 3D matrix. There are attachments to them. I found somebody in a death loop yesterday that died during an accident. They were in a death loop and they had attachments. So it's kind of like they were in the loop, but the entities were also feeding off of their fear and confusion during the loop. So the dark ones feed off of those stuck in death loops. Yes, they do. Yep. So they're basically they're exploiting the loop. They're exploiting the glitch. Kind of like how politicians create their own their own little loopholes so they can exploit. It's the same thing. They didn't create it technically, although reptilians did hack the 3D matrix and made it a lot worse. So But this is why we go into certain areas and we find like hundreds, if not even thousands of people that are stuck in these areas that are repeating the same thing. And it happens so frequently. Like we cleared somewhere in Florida the other day and we did a property check around the house because there were quite a few earthbounds. And we're like, why are there so many earthbounds here? So we check and there was a bus accident from 1937 where 67 people were still stuck in the death loop. 67 people were still crashing in the bus over and over and over and over again since the 30s. Isn't that crazy? So you just never know what will cause a death loop either. It could be absolutely anything from a gas explosion to an accident to somebody drowning to, I mean, it could literally be like an Acme moment where an anvil falls and lands on them. It's any way that you die in a very shocking, traumatic, rapid succession. That's usually what happens. You just end up repeating it. Somebody said, how long have the Dracos been here? Since longer than we humans have. They had this planet first, technically. Well, I shouldn't say they had it. They came here to exploit it first, then they left, and then we came, and then they came back again. This is part of the reason why we're always arguing about whose planet this is. In my opinion, it belongs to the Sasquatch. If you ask me who should be owners of this planet, it should be the Sasquatch. We should give it back to them. This work won't be done for nothing. We're shining a light, guiding everyone to a sovereign earth. Beautifully said, Dale. Exactly. How can I get out of a death loop if my past versions of me is stuck in one? Well, you wouldn't have crossed over. You wouldn't have taken a new body if you were still stuck in the death loop, because that is where your perception is. Your consciousness can split itself in as many different forms as it wishes, but if your perception is locked into the death loop, you're going to be in that death loop until your perception changes. That is where your perception of your soul is at that moment. So until you shift out of that perception, you're going to continue to be in that loop until someone releases you. And then you go to the healing place, and then you decide what version of yourself you want to experience. It's basically like we're stuck in a, what do they call it? Like a virtual reality game. It's kind of what it reminds me of. Thank you for explaining that, Kat. Kat said it wasn't, hold on. It's something that is ending with the shift. This is part of what we have to clear yet to get when we get to 5D. Once we hit a certain energetic point, these types of things won't exist, but there will still be more work to do, just different work. Yep. What you believe adjusts perception. Yes, Daniel Jackson, exactly. Absolutely. That is very true. Your perception is everything. Once your perception starts to shift, you're able to kind of manifest new things and put yourself into new experiences. But unless your perception, if it stays the same, you're just going to keep repeating cycles over and over again. You know what they say about the definition of insanity? Hey, Laura, the first thing I saw on my social media feed this morning was that doll Annabelle has gone missing. Have you heard anything about that? Patrick. If I hear about Annabelle one more freaking time, swear to God. She's nothing. This all is in my feed. Every time I see her face in my feed, I'm hiding it now. I'm like, no, I've had enough. Go away. Like, no. Couldn't your guides keep you out of a death loop? It's nothing to do with your guides. It's you. Your guides are not the problem. So a death loop happens when you have a certain shock. Like it's a shock to your system. So in most cases, your guides can help you. Your guides can help you, right? But your perception, if you are locked into this death loop, you're not going to see your guides. You're not even going to know that you have guides. You're not even going to know that you're dead. So you don't even know that you're deceased. So you don't know to look for your guides. So you don't know to ask them for help, to ask them to help you cross over. So you're just dying over and over again. Like we cleared this one gentleman who died in a plane crash. Very, very sad story. His wife and him always flew together, but this one time she wasn't feeling well. So she stayed down on the ground. He went up in the plane, died midair. So his plane exploded like midair. So he didn't even crash, like he exploded. So we went in and we checked his to see if he was all right, and he was still in a death loop. He was still just exploding over and over again. So he didn't even know he was dead. So yeah, unfortunately, it's your perception is everything when it comes to this stuff. And if your perception is locked into the trauma, then you're going to keep recycling the trauma. So we had to go in, we stopped the thing from exploding over and over. We kind of removed him from that glitch, and then we helped his guide, his guides helped him cross over. So this is part of the issue, but at the same time, like as we go up in the 5D shift, we may not even have to kind of rescue people from these death loops. It may actually just kind of sort itself after we do after we raise frequency and are in 5D. It should kind of cancel itself out and no longer be an issue, at least at that frequency. So Amma says, "Oh, can I ask a question about Marlon? Kat will be on the podcast this week. Very, very excited about it. You guys will be able to ask Merlin questions on Wednesday if you would like. In fact, I'm sure he would love that. Have like an Ask Merlin session." And is today a super karmic day? Manifesting? I don't know. It's a good way of looking at things. Things are changing very rapidly to the point where you can tell almost on a daily basis that things are ramping up energetically, especially in regards to the 5D shift. Like you can tell things are not. You know what else is a really cool side effect? They said that as the 5D shift intensifies, there will be less people around. And I was like, why? And they're like, because the NPCs will start disappearing. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes me feel better. Like, that was the best thing they could have told me to cheer me up about the whole, like, we're going up in frequency and there's going to be some people stuck down there. And I was a bit sad about that. And I could tell that they were a bit like, well, let's say something to cheer her up. They're like, by the way, NPCs will start going away as you go up in 5D. And I'm like, yeah, yay. Woohoo. That is the one thing that makes me most excited about. I'm not a fan of crowds. And I don't know about you guys, but there's so many people around that it's like nobody's home, right? Like there was a guy yesterday who pulled in behind me. We went to get dinner, and because I was not cooking Saturday night after class, I can tell you that. So we pull into this restaurant, we go and get Chinese food and come out, and this guy pulled up behind me and he completely boxed me in. Like I couldn't pull out at all. And I looked at him and I was like, can you move so I can get out? And he just looked at me like I had 3 heads. He looked at me like there was nobody home. And I was like looking at him, and it took me a minute to actually connect to him, to get him to understand that I needed him to move his car, because it was like I was talking to a wall. Like nobody was home. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is that? And they're like, oh, that was an NPC. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because intuitively, I was like, what is wrong with that guy? like, was he on drugs? What's happening here? And they were like, no, it's just an NPC. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. So could you imagine how nice would that be? How many NPCs are there? Well, they did say that there's only about 1.5 billion people on this planet, and all the rest of them are NPCs. All the rest of them. So can you imagine? They say there's like what, 7.5 billion? But in reality, there's only like 1.5 to 2 billion people. All the rest of them are NPCs. So only about a quarter of the people we run into actually have consciousness. The rest of them are all part of the 3D matrix. They're part of the glitch. Charisma says, what are NPCs exactly? They are a side effect of the 3D matrix. They're, you know how like if you play a video game and some of the characters in the video game will be played by real people that are like logged in on their consoles and they're playing their game and they're on the controller, right? And you could talk to those people. You have a headset on. You could be like, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And have a conversation. But then you get other people in the video game that are run by like the bots. They're basically run by the computer game itself. They're part of the actual game. They're part of the design of the map itself. Like you try and talk to them and they're just going to say 5 things on repeat. That's an NPC. They do not have a soul. No, they do not have a soul. So it's like the computer. Yes, it's basically like the 3D matrix is manifesting humans. Yes, exactly. So with the 3D matrix going away, that means that the things that it incorporates unnaturally, like the NPCs, they're going to start going away. Because like you're going to start to notice that, you know, a difference between some people, like I said, that one guy just felt like there was nobody home. Like he was just, it's like talking to a wall. I had to explain myself like 3-4 times, and I had to point at the back of my car, and I'm like, because I parked like this and he parks like this, and I'm like, how am I supposed to get out? And I'm looking at him, I'm like, do you mind, buddy? Like, hey, can you let me out? And he's just like, huh? So yes, they say NPC, non-player character. Non-player characters. So you know what's interesting, right? You star seeds out here. Those of you who are in a pod, you took one of those bodies. So all of you star seeds that chose a body technically that came in through a pod, you had to choose in many cases, you had to take an NPC body. Are the NPCs planted? Well, they're a side effect of the 3D matrix. They're not natural. They're not supposed to be here. No. Like poof, go away. Yes. In fact, like they don't die. No, they don't die. Get this, right? So let's say you're driving down the highway. I know this is going to sound completely nuts, but bear with me, right? So you're driving down the highway, you're looking around, you're in traffic everywhere. Okay. Traffic is galore. Pretend you're in LA or something, right? So you're stuck on an 8-lane highway driving somewhere in one direction and there's just cars everywhere, right? So if you look over and you're talking to the person next to you, you'll be able to have a conversation with them. You could ask them, hey, how's the weather? You know, like you're stuck in a traffic jam. You're not moving anyway. So you can look over and have a conversation with this person and be like, hey, how are you? This really sucks, doesn't it? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and have a conversation with that person. But as soon as that person turns and goes off the highway, right? And as soon as they continue on off the highway, that person does not go home. If they're an NPC, they don't go straight to their house. They don't go home and feed their cats. They don't go home and do the things. They literally disappear as soon as they're no longer in view of you, they're gone. Their car vanishes. This is why I say this is a conversation that is kind of very difficult for people to understand. Okay. Dolores used to talk about this quite a lot. We've talked about this before in regards to how you are the center of your own holographic reality. You are the center of your own dimension, your own frequency reality. Okay. So everything that you believe is real around you, we can knock on the table. It feels real. It feels real, right? But it's not. Because technically you are creating this illusion around you. So you are the center of your own holographic reality. So if you were not there, nothing would be there. And it's interesting because, you know, it's like we're all co-creating in our own holographic reality. You are creating your own reality that is independent to everybody else's. And even though it may seem that we are sharing a reality, we could be standing right next to each other, side by side. We're not technically in the same reality. You are the center of your own holographic reality. I am the center of my own holographic reality. So the way that we manifest things, in fact, it's almost like if that person wanted to go into a different timeline, even though you're standing side by side, they start making different decisions. They end up in a different timeline than you. This is why certain cars and things will just disappear. And when you turn back around, it's just gone. Yes. I've had this before where I pulled into a parking lot. The parking lot is completely full. There's a line out the door. And I'm like, oh, fuck this. I'll be back in 2 minutes. I'll go drive around the block, come back, and the line is shorter. And there's more parking spots available. And I'm like, well, you know, this is it. You tell them that you don't like Adriana a few months ago. This was really funny. She went to go and get her car sorted out somewhere in town where it's always, always busy. And she took her like 3-4 hours to get all of these things sorted. So the next time she had to go do it, she said to her guide, she's like, when I go there will be no NPCs, none. I will not have a 3-hour line. When I go there will be a parking spot right out front for me. And when I get there, nobody's going to be there. And I will be able to get my stuff done quickly and go home. She straight up was like, boom, I am manifesting this. 2 guesses what happened. The second time she goes, sure enough, there was nobody there. She got a parking spot right out front. She got all of her stuff sorted. And what's funny is that as she was finishing up, they had a rush and there were like 20 people that came in behind her, but she was already done and walking out by the time that happened. So all of these things, like people get very confused with this subject because, like I said, this is like college level quantum physics type understanding. Okay. For example, like, you know how they say if a tree falls in the woods, but nobody is around to hear it, did the tree make a sound? So technically, to answer that question from the metaphysical standpoint of this holographic reality, if nobody was around, then no, nobody heard the tree because there is no tree. There is no forest if there was nobody around to witness the forest. And then a lot of people will be like, well, what about the trees? The trees are source, the trees are consciousness. Yeah, in their own parallel reality, yeah, they are. In that tree's parallel reality, nothing changes because that is how they're planted. But in your perception, those trees are going to be kind of fluid. They can change depending on whether or not you are there. So a lot of people get confused about this. Like, does my house disappear when I'm no longer there? Yeah, it does. Technically, because I'm not in Egypt right now, right? I'm here, I'm planted in Pennsylvania, right? There is no reality today where I hop on an airplane to go to Egypt. So technically, in my parallel reality, Egypt doesn't exist right now because I'm not there. There is no reason for them to manifest this within my particular reality. So for those of you who are video game players, this makes it a little bit easier to understand. If you're not in a certain area of the map, why would the game pull up the map in the first place? Right? So if you're not in that area, why should the game board manifest it if you're not in that space? That would be a whole lot of wasted space. So technically, if I were to hang up with you guys, go online and book a flight to Egypt, get on an airplane, go to Egypt, I will manifest a version of Egypt that exists in my parallel reality. Does that make sense? I hope I'm helping you guys understand this because I'm well aware how crazy this completely sounds. What about people that we don't know? We can meet them anywhere and they'll give you a positive, meaningful message. What are they? They're giving you a side quest, Anita. They're quest givers, like you would normally find in a video game. You come up across somebody and you're like, oh, this person has my attention. And you go and you have a conversation and they say, hey, how about you do this or this? And you're like, that's a really good idea. I had a day off next week. Why don't I do that? That actually happened to me not last year. I went in to buy some flowers and I told them when my birthday was. And then I said something about how lilacs were my favorite flower. And this guy was like, well, why don't you go to the lilac festival? And I said, there's a lilac festival? And he said, yeah, every year in Rochester. You've never been? And I said, no. And he goes, oh, yeah, 2,000 lilac trees all blooming at the same time. And I'm like, oh, my God, guess what I'm doing for my birthday? So that's what I did. I got in the car and drove up to the lilac festival and walked around 2,000 lilac trees last year for my birthday. And that is basically a side quest. That was the universe going, hey, I have a quest for you. Do you accept it? Yes, I do accept. Thank you. So you meet people all the time that will give you these little side quests, these little tasks. Makes it a lot more fun when you think of this as a video game, technically. You're like, all right, I accept. So yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of little things that'll pop up. It could be angels. Yeah, they talk about guardian angels and interesting people that pop into your life for a certain reason. Those divine appointments that we like to talk about. Can we expand on this subject more on Astara? Well, don't forget, we also have Angelica's thing at 11 today. I was actually hoping to join that, but then I realized we double booked that. So I didn't realize Angelica also booked during Astara. So for those of you who booked with Angelica, don't forget today. That is today. That'll be starting in a couple minutes. In this video game, who is the final boss? I don't know. Our ego, probably. The Federation. I don't know. We bumped into another officer over the weekend, another Lizzie officer, and I thought, man, I hope they don't get bigger and scarier than this. But they probably do. Yes, we'll do the Monday mentorship circle. Hi, Tina. I forgot to book with Angelica anyway, so I'll just get the recording later. So, but don't forget, like I said, Angelica's thing is today. If you paid to join Angelica, don't forget that it's starting in 8 minutes. Otherwise, we'll just chat on Astara. Hi, Sarah Jane. Nice to see you, gorgeous. Are you gonna push your mentorship circle back? Probably not. No, because I don't. My schedule is full. I can't push anything back, or otherwise I'll have to cancel something. My schedule is very full. Everything is us. Everything is source. Yes, Adam. Technically. But even though it may be us and source, you still disassociate and start to go very far away from source, technically, like the Lizzies did. Can we skip Astara so everyone, including you, can join Siddhartha? I mean, it's up to you guys. I could always make it tomorrow. I could do the Astara chat for tomorrow if you guys want to join Angelica. Would that work better? Can we do that? Tina, do you mind switching that over? Let's do it tomorrow because technically I don't have anything going on tomorrow. I could do it tomorrow. And that way we could all join Angelica. What do you guys want to do? Yes, tomorrow, please. All right, let's join Angelica. We'll all we'll all invade Angelica in 5 minutes. All right, it's perfect. We'll reschedule that. Thank you, Tina, by the way, for checking that out. Yeah, let's all join Angelica. Do I need Astara? The Astara chat is here. In fact, for those of you who have not paid for Angelica's thing, let me get that for you. Because I also have to sign up last minute too, because I completely forgot that was today. Thank you for those who reminded me about that today. She's got a song to go with it here. Here it is. All right, I'm going to get the sign up link. There's the sign up link. Sarah Jane, if you want to come on the podcast next week, you're more than welcome to. I got a spot open next Thursday, I believe. Message me, honey, and we'll check it out. All right. Well, there's the link. If you guys want to join us, we're going to join Siddhartha's chat in just a minute. So we'll postpone. We'll do the Astara chat tomorrow so that way we can do both. So I'll answer questions from class tomorrow. And then we'll also do the Astara chat and we can talk about whatever you guys would like. Let's do it. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to sign up with Angelica. There's the link one more time in case you missed it. And it should automatically email you the link just as soon as you pay for it. It should pop right up. I think it's $33. Let's help Angelica pay her rent, shall we? So it's moved to tomorrow, so don't forget. I won't forget, Tina. Thank you, darling. Love you. Ray says, once I get myself situated, I'm going to take your class to do what you do. Yes, Ray, I would love that. We need all the help we can get, Ray. We really do. Perfect. All right. Well, I love you guys. I will see you guys on with Angelica just now, or I will see you guys tomorrow on the podcast. Who is on for tomorrow anyway? I forgot to check. Let's see. Loy has been confirmed for Thursday. I just needed to chat with Loy. She has confirmed she will be there Thursday. Let's see. Who do we got? Oh, Tammy Lepresti will be on the podcast tomorrow. Yay! Tammy, and then Kat Irwin is going to be on Wednesday, and then Loy will be on Thursday. So we're going to have some great chats this week. I love you guys. I will see you on with Siddhartha in just a minute. Otherwise, I will see you guys with Tammy tomorrow morning. Have a great day. Mwah. Love you guys. See you guys soon. Bye, everyone.